This is a quick video to review some of the things that you'll be doing for the written assignments in Lesson 1. The first assignment goes through several tools to get experience with so that we can move forward when we start to draw. And in the first video, we looked at Zoom. We said that you could type in Z and enter, and then type in various other commands that you'll see here in your command line, like E and enter for Zoom Extents. Or you can use the wheel of your mouse, as we said, to hold the wheel down to pan, or roll the wheel to zoom, or double click on the wheel to zoom extents. There are several other zoom commands that you can use this navigation bar to pick up the navigation wheel, and here again is pan and some of the zoom commands in this navigation bar. The erase command we did work with in the video assignment lesson 1, and with the erase command I'll just repeat it a little bit. We can start the erase command by clicking on the erase icon, or I'm going to go ahead and draw a line here. We can select the line and then pick the erase icon or the delete on the keyboard. Some people actually right click and pick erase also. And there are other things you can do here in the assignment to experience working with the crossing window, which is when you click in space and you pull your mouse to the left, you have this crossing window. You can also type in C for crossing, or to the right, you have this blue window, which is the specific window we talked about in the first video for selecting objects. When you move an object, you can type in M for move, or you can use here in the modify panel the move icon here. When you start the move command, you can select the object, you can enter it, because as we said, when your command line says select objects, you have to know to press enter. It doesn't say to do that in the command line, so I'm going to either press enter or use my right mouse button as an enter. And now your command line says specify base point. Well, I'm going to pick the end of this line as a base point, and then I can pick a different place to move it, maybe the end of this line or out in space. There are several different ways that you can use the move command. You can pull your mouse in a direction you want to go in and move it. So you can pull your mouse towards the left, type in 2 and enter, and now you just move that line 2 inches over. With the rotate command, you can start the rotate command here. There's an icon in the modify panel, or you can type in the quick key for it. When you start the rotate command, your command line says select object, so you select the object and then you enter it, and now it's asking for a base point. We said in the first video that the command line down here at the bottom is the most important part of the screen, so it's asking you to specify a base point or rotation point. So I'm going to go ahead and click here, and then you can type in whatever your angle is. Maybe it's 60 degrees, and now that line will rotate 60 degrees. With the stretch command, stretch is a great command. It is one of the best, I think, to practice and work with. For the stretch command, I'm going to go ahead and draw a rectangle, just a random rectangle. I'm going to go ahead in the draw panel, and here's the rectangle command. I'm going to click on that, pick a point, pull my mouse over and click. For assignment 1, you have specific instructions to go through. After we start the stretch command, right here in the modify panel, or typing in the quick key, what we're doing here is we're creating a crossing window. So we're going to click from right to left, and we're including all those objects that we want to move completely and cross over the objects that we want to stretch. So if I pull my mouse over and click and then enter, we can pick a base point. The base point can be a specific point, or it can be out in space so that you might want to stretch a certain amount. So I'm just going to go ahead and click in space. But notice when I pull my mouse around, you're seeing that you're actually stretching this out. The line is moving because it was completely inside of the box, but the lines that you're crossing over are stretching. So if we pull our mouse straight to the right, we could type in 2 and enter, and you can stretch the object 2 inches. Real-time pan and zoom have to do with being able to use some of these commands here, like over in the navigation bar. You can click on that arrow and go to zoom real time, and what you're really doing is you're holding your left mouse button down and zooming up and down. And this is if you don't have a mouse with a wheel on it. If you have a mouse with the wheel on it, you can just use the wheel. So I'm just going to go ahead and right click and pick exit. Now, we don't use scale command that much, only to scale an object by a specific scale factor. And the reason that I am reluctant to use the scale factor is that we don't want to take our full scale drawings that are in this model space and scale them too often. What we're doing is we're drawing everything at full scale, and then we're going to print it at the specific scale that we need. So if you needed to have an object twice the size or half the size, you can start the scale command. Sometimes we use the scale command to scale up your title blocks, like the border that goes around your objects, because we're drawing things at a larger scale or a smaller scale. So we'll come back to scale factors as we work with larger drawings. So we'll go ahead and scale this rectangle up twice the size. We'll start the scale command, select your object. So we're going to select this rectangle. It's actually all one piece, and we'll talk about that later too. Press enter. Pick a base point. This is the base point of where you want it to be scaled from. And then you notice when I pull my mouse away from that point, I'm actually scaling it up or down so I can type in whatever the scale factor is. Maybe I want it to be twice the size, so I'm going to type in 2 and enter. Twice the size. Okay, the lengthen command is pretty helpful. If we have a line here, I'm going to go ahead and draw a line. We can find the lengthen tool underneath the word modify in this panel. There is a type in for it. You can look at it through assignment 1 over here. So underneath the modify panel, there it is, lengthen. When you look at your command line, there are all of these different options. When you select your line to change the measurement, you can see in your command line, the first thing that you notice is that by selecting a line, it tells you the current length. So if you have a drawing, you want to find out all the different lengths of the lines, you can just use the lengthen command to select those lines and find out what the length is. But a deeper dive into the lengthen command would be these nested options that you can go through in the assignment. When we talk about changing properties of an object, we want to try to keep our properties in line with the layer properties. So I would suggest that when you see these by layer colors, line weights, and line types in the properties panel, that you keep them by layer so that they are linked to the layer. That way, when you change the color, when you change the line weight or the type in the layer property, you can change everything in the drawing, and a lot of companies will suggest that it's good standard to stay it by layer. Another choice to change just the properties of one object would be to select that object, right click, and go to properties. Here at the bottom, a properties panel will appear, and this is where you can change individually the properties of that object. One of the reasons I like to recommend that you do it this way is that once you change it here under by layer, a lot of students forget to change it back and end up with a lot of lines that are not in line with the layer settings. The trim command has changed slightly from release 2020 to 21 in that when you start the command in 20 you had to press enter before selecting several objects to trim out, and now the defaults are that when you start the trim command you can basically start trimming out the objects that will intersect back to the cutting edges, and even in this new release be able to select objects to erase. If you have 2020 you won't be able to trim this line because it doesn't intersect any others. So give it a try, take a look at the different options. If you have 2020, when you start the command, press enter to accept all objects as cutting edges. There is also a cutting edge right here that you can use to establish the edges that you need to trim back to. So if I go ahead and start cutting edges, I'll go ahead and click it, and then I'm going to maybe select this circle as my cutting edge and then enter it, and now it's asking me to select the objects to trim. So these objects are going to trim only back to that cutting edge. Okay, extend is very similar, and if you notice when you're in the trim command, after you select an object you have here the ability to hold your shift key in order to extend. So if I hold my shift key and I click on this circle, it's going to extend to that line. Or you can start the extend command and go through the same idea. The break command is exactly what it sounds like. We're kind of breaking the line or the object. There's a couple different ways you can break a line. You can break a line here between 2 points, or you can break a line at one specific point. So take a look at that as an option for a tool to work with. Copy and offset are definitely commands that we use a lot. The copy command is here underneath move or the quick key. You can go ahead and start the copy command. You select the object, you enter it, you pick a base point, and you pick a second point. A lot of students will pick the second point first, but what we need to do is for the first point that you pick, you're establishing where you want to pick that object up, and then the second point you're establishing where you want to put it, and it kind of keeps you in that command, so you can keep clicking, or you can use your escape key to cancel out of that. Now the offset command is one of my favorite commands, and we use it quite a lot, so you should get used to using it. So let's go ahead and start the offset command. Now with the offset command is a little different than all the rest because you're asked for a specific distance first. So a lot of students will try to look around and see what they want to select. But with this one, you're actually deciding on how far you want to create this copy. So I'm going to type in, let's say 1, and enter. Then I'll select this object as the object to offset. Look at your command line. There's my object to offset. Now you pull your mouse towards the direction you want, or the side that you want to offset that original line. So it says specify point on side to offset. So for this example, I'm going to pull my mouse up and click. See, if I select that line, pull my mouse up and click, I can continue offsetting this line by that specific distance. Now, if you select that line and you pull your mouse up, you'll see that you have a little edit box right there, which means I could actually type in 2 and enter and create an offset that's 2 inches. So I can select this line, pull my mouse up and type in a different number, 3, and enter. So we don't have to end the command each time to create an offset. And if you use a rectangle command, it's a polyline or all one piece. When we offset it, it offsets the whole thing, which is kind of helpful when we draw our floor plans. We're going to use the polyline right here as a tool to draw the outside walls first, and then use offset to offset the distance. The mirror command will help you to do just that, mirror the objects. So I'm going to start the mirror command, and typically you're asked to select the objects, so I'm going to go ahead and select all of these objects, and then I'm going to enter because my command line says select objects. Now in this case I don't have a mirror line, let's say, so I'm going to just click in space. You're going to be asked for 2 points as kind of a mirror line, so I'm going to click here and pull my mouse down. See, you can already see the images there. I'm going to click again, and now you have to watch your command line or your pointer because you're asked if you want to erase the source objects, if you want to erase those original objects. Sometimes you just want to flip something so that it is flipped to the other side, and other times you want to extend the other half of a detail. So by default it's no, so I'm going to go ahead and press enter, and I have my mirror. The chamfer command will help, and fillet. Chamfer and fillet are very similar. Chamfer gives us a diagonal straight line that might be at this corner, and a fillet will be kind of a curved line or an arc that's created. So they're both over here, diagonal from the erase icon. Here's fillet and chamfer. If we look at chamfer and just rest your pointer on the command, you'll see that there's some information that we need. We need to know the distance from the corner, and so there's a distance 1 and a distance 2. And so when you create a distance 1, make sure that you click on that line that you want to use that distance. So you can have different distances. Most of the time they're the same, but we'll go ahead. Let's start the chamfer command. And now what we need to do is to change the distance. So I'm going to go ahead and click on distance, or type in D for distance. And notice that it says first chamfer distance. So maybe my first chamfer distance is 0.5, and then enter. But now stop and watch your command line because you have a second distance. If your second distance is different, I'm going to type in something different like 0.25 and enter. I want to select the line that I want for my first distance, my 0.5 first, and then my second line right there for my second distance. And notice here on this corner that this distance is my 0.5 and this one is my 0.25. The fillet command is very similar. The difference between the two is that the fillet will be the arcs, and you're establishing a radius. So I'm going to go to fillet, and I'll pick radius, and now you specify the fillet radius. Maybe it's 0.5 and enter. And then I'm going to select these 2 lines, and I create this curve or this fillet. Now you want to be careful when you use the fillet command, because with the fillet command we can extend lines and we can trim them. So if you have, I'm going to set up here a line that is crossing each other. When I use the fillet command, I want to select the objects that I want to keep. Okay, so if I select these 2, then AutoCAD will trim back the ones at the top right. But if I pick these 2 here, you can see that I'm now trimming the ones at the bottom right. So you're selecting the objects that you want to keep for the fillet. And they're actually trimming the lines back. I'm going to escape out of that to show you what happens when we fillet lines that are not touching each other. I can still fillet this one and this one. You see how it extends? So it actually trims and extends the lines on the outside. Also, when you start the fillet or the chamfer command, I would recommend that you type in M for multiple, or you click on multiple if you have more than one. It sets you in the fillet command and you don't have to keep going back to it. So you start the fillet command, you click on multiple, you click on radius, you set up your fillet radius, maybe 1, and enter, and then you start clicking your lines that you need to use. Click, 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 right? So you can create several here fillets if you use the multiple nested option. The other kind of cool thing about the fillet command is that it will fillet parallel lines, so you don't even have to put in the radius. You start the fillet command and you click on the 2 parallel lines that you want to use to create a radius. Now take a look. If I click on this longer line first and this shorter line, you see how the arc will come out to the first line that I picked, which was the longer one, right? But if I undo that and I use the fillet command and I pick the shorter one first and then the longer one, see how the arc comes back to the shorter one that I picked first. These are parallel lines. We can use the fillet command to create those arcs. Okay, we have an array command. The array command will help you to array objects around a center point, or to create a rectangular array. So we have rectangular array and we have polar array. If you take a look here, by just resting your pointer on the icon, you can see the pattern. So you can just look at this rectangular array little help box and see that one of these objects was selected, and by knowing the columns and the rows and the distance between the columns and the rows, you can create an array. The polar array is very similar. You are watching your command line, going through the assignment to select that one object, enter it, pick a center point, and then establish your total number of objects. And if you want to go all the way around 360 degrees, maybe you just want to go 180 degrees, very quick way of creating more than one object. Divide will divide a line by placing points along that line. So if you need to divide a line up into 10 equal parts, you can use the divide command to do that. The divide command and also the measure command are very similar. They don't actually cut the line or modify it anyway. So if you type in div and enter, you can select the line and you can see in your command line, enter the number of segments. If I type in 10 and enter, it doesn't look like anything's happened, but if I go across it, you can see that there are little points placed there, and those points are called nodes. So you really have to be able to turn on your object snap at the bottom here called node. You can click on the little arrow next to object snap and pick node so that it's on and you can snap to it. These are the object snaps that help you to grab onto geometric positions in an AutoCAD, like endpoints and centers. So I'm going to pick up the node option. I'll start the line command, and then you see here I can now see where those little nodes are placed when I use the divide command. The measure command is very similar. The measure command will measure out so many segments based on the length that you decide. So that was assignment 1, and hopefully you can work through that and get that experience with working with those modify commands. We have also assignment 2, which is using some of those tools to open up a drawing and save the drawing as our assignment number, and then working with the tools that are from assignment 1 to copy this floor plan and change it from the before picture to the after picture. So you'll be using commands like move and mirror, like the door is going to be mirrored probably, or rotated. You can rotate the toilet, move it, same with the bath and the sink. So do your best to practice those commands and create the after picture. Assignment 3, same thing. You're going to open up this drawing and save it as our assignment number. The drawing itself starts off with a couple of walls, so you can use the offset command to create your 6-inch thick walls, and you can use commands like extend or fillet with a radius of 0, which gives you a really nice corner here to work with. You can also use some of the commands that we used in the lesson 1 video. So I would recommend that you type in units. It's all one word, units, and just make sure that the drawing that you opened, or just verify and just see that the units are changed to architectural here at the top left. And what that will do is help you to draw in the lines using the architectural little feet mark, which is really the apostrophe. So here it is. I'm changing my units to architectural, and then if I starting the line command and I click a point, I can pull my mouse to the right. I can type in 10 and then apostrophe. The apostrophe next to the enter key there is like feet. That's all you need. 10 apostrophe and enter. And there's your 10-foot line. You'll have to just verify that the drawing does have the units set up to architectural. See, now I can pull my mouse down and type in 10 apostrophe, and to the left 10 apostrophe for the feet, and then I could do close, C for close. See, now I'm going to use offset to offset those lines and some of the other commands that we just went over. Okay, so hopefully that helps you assignments 1, 2, and 3 for this lesson.